Zidane Danny, Electro Ninja here, and welcome back to Nerd Chat here on Electro Ninja's Lab. I am here with my fellow hosts.
Joker.
I'm Jack.
Slow start today. We're all a little bit tired. It's cool.
Jack's a sleepy boy.
Pretty much. So, today we decided we would talk about Final Fantasy, specifically because Jack is thinking about starting it, which is gonna be fun. So, me and Joker have both played a little bit of Final Fantasy, and Jack, you haven't played any, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Um, Joker, you've only played a little bit of 14, right? Or have you played some of the other games?
I think I've only played 14.
Okay. So basically, so this nerd chat is a little bit different because rather than being a discussion about things, it's kind of going to be more of a Q&A where these boys get to ask me questions about Final Fantasy, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Keep in mind that I have played 7, 9, a little bit of 8, a little bit of 10, seen a little bit of 11, watched a good amount from the original 6. I have played a little bit of 12, where I realized that it was a terrible game. Uh, played most of 13 and a little bit of 13 too. Um, I regularly play Final Fantasy 14. Have finished 15. Still have a bit more left to go on 16, and then obviously I've played the 7 remake and almost done with Rebirth. Played a good amount of Crisis Core. Played a good number of the spin-offs, and then obviously I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts fan. So obviously I know everything about the Final Fantasy series because I've played Kingdom Hearts extensively. That's a joke, just so you're aware.
I was gonna say, they're like connected, but they're not the same.
No, they are not. So speaking of basically, the several Final Fantasy characters, mostly characters from 7 and 8, happen to be in the Kingdom Hearts series. There's also Vivi from Final Fantasy 9, and I think there might be a few from some of the other games, but I'm not remembering off the top of my head. And then obviously, the regular, pretty much the characters that are constantly appearing throughout the series are so Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse. They're always they've been in pretty much every single Final Fantasy since I want to say 6, maybe it just started in 7, but yeah, they've been in every single game. And then there's also always a character named Sid. So there's that. So yeah. So I think, yeah. So so there's at least one character from every single one of the from several different Final Fantasies in Final Fantasy 7. There are mostly it's Final Fantasy 7 characters. There are a few 8 characters there, and then there's one 9 character. There are 2 10 characters. No one from 11, no one from 12, no one from 13. And obviously no one from 14, 15, or 16. So yeah, but that's mostly because of the fact that Kingdom Hearts started like right around the time that shortly after 10 came out, so that's why. But yeah, no other characters from other Final Fantasies has shown up since then.
Nice. That's weird, but okay.
To be fair, Kingdom Hearts is a melting pot of games, so.
Well, Final Fantasy is also like, it's not one story. Each game has its separate story. That's about as much as I know.
Yes. So, the only times that you will ever find each numbered Final Fantasy is a separate game. If it says Final Fantasy whatever the number and then it has like an extra bit or it's 10-2 or 13-2 or Lightning Returns, those games are actually connected. They're in the same universe, blah, 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 blah. There have been hints that all of the Final Fantasies share a multiverse, but it's kind of an iffy situation because, like, I believe 10 and 7 have, like, some connections, but it's pretty minor, and there's references to several games in pretty much every single one of them. It's especially apparent in the MMO, specifically 14. But yeah. So, what questions do you guys have about the Final Fantasy games?
Well, I'm not really sure. Like, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I would have more questions after I've actually, like, even seen gameplay, where I haven't really seen anything about. I've seen a bunch of memes about Final Fantasy, but I definitely haven't seen, like, gameplay or, literally anything else.
Yeah. So, as I've already told you guys a little bit about it. So, first off, 1 through 9, they are all turn-based combat. Starting in 10, they started to fiddle with the idea of a little bit more action-based. Well, they've been fiddling with it for a bit, but it didn't really become close to action. The closest it came to action-based was in 12, and up until like 15, up until 15 came out, and we'll get to that in a bit. But basically, 12 is the bastard child between action combat and turn-based combat, because it still has that aspect to it, but it's very if you've Ni no Kuni is actually a good example of what this game is trying to do, but they didn't succeed when it came to 12. So they
Interesting.
yeah, so it's kind of a weird situation. Apparently a lot of people do like 12. I just don't understand why, because it's, like I said, it's not a good version of the turn-based action idea. And granted, that was because this was like a pretty early attempt at it, while Ni no Kuni would come out a few years later and blow things out of the water with it. Which that is another thing that's kind of interesting about them is that they are they have a lot more actions. So you're constantly like going into all sorts of menus, doing all sorts of things, and I think part of the that's part of the reason why they had to be turn-based is because there are so many things that you're doing that it just wouldn't make you're activating regular abilities. You're activating you're activating magic. You're activating physical abilities, all sorts of abilities, and every single every single monster, every single creature has like certain weaknesses, and also some of them will absorb attacks. So if you like, say for example, Kingdom Hearts is actually a slightly better example because I know it better. But in the original Kingdom Hearts game, if you were to fire off a fire attack at a fire-based enemy, then you would, such as a Red Nocturne in Kingdom Hearts, but there's a lot more in Final Fantasy, they would absorb that attack, and then they would become stronger, whether that be by healing or whatever.
Oh, that's horrible.
Huh?
Well, that's horrible.
It can be, but at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. Like, imagine if you, so, take for example the bomb from the Final Fantasy games. If you fire off a fire attack, you're making it grow bigger, and then it's more like it'll cause it to grow bigger, and then when it eventually explodes, it causes way more damage. So you wouldn't want to.
So kind of like in Pokemon when you've got the Paldean Wooper that evolves into Clodsire, and Clodsire like doesn't take any water damage because it's like got that special power.
Yeah, and it's kind of like that. Not every enemy is like that, but at the same time, there were early on there were a lot more. They've slowly, as you get further into the series, they've kind of downsized on that because of the fact that uh, especially the younger audience who was playing these games would start to be like, oh, that's infuriating, and stop playing the game pretty early on because of the fact that it just drove them up the wall. Um,
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting, um, and it's one of the reasons why even though 1 through 6 is what is the game that you were looking at, correct?
Yes.
So
So is that one going to be different? Like, it's 1 through 6, but there it said something about pixels. Were they originally pixely, like
yes,
pixel sprites? Or like, okay,
yeah. So 1 through 6 were all completely 2D, and there were it's kind of a weird situation, anyways. But the early games, especially, were basically classes, and these classes would join you, and then you would select what team you wanted, and you had to make sure that you kept your team balanced, but you also wanted to make sure that you were leveling all of your different characters, because if you didn't level them all up, then at some point you're gonna get into a situation where you're like, oh fuck.
Interesting.
Yeah. So like for
So like that old Pokemon game.
kind of, yeah.
Pokemon, and it's also like what is it? Fire Emblem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot
The
of games
orig-
like that. And
That.
it was especially bad up until I want to say 9. I think 9 was probably the last one where they did that. I could be wrong. They might have continued doing it in no, wait. Yeah, they kept doing it for quite a while. I think in 13 they even still had it. Because you wanted to make sure that you were rotating your party. You didn't want to have one group of your party be super over leveled. For example, when I first played Final Fantasy IX, I used I used a very specific team. I used Zidane, Dagger, Vivi, and Eco, and they were super they were at a great level. They could handle a lot of things, but then there were times where I had to play as the other 4 party members, and none of them were leveled up. and it was really bad. So it was that's one of the reasons why you always want to make sure that you're leveling up everybody, and especially when you get to points where you have access to a whole bunch of the characters, swap them out. Make sure that you're using both, pretty much the entire party. Because if you're not using the entire party, then they're gonna slowly degrade and falter and be shit. But also, there's some other things that are really interesting about the game. In a lot of them have different mechanics. So, for example, 7 uses what is called the materia system, where every single character can use any ability except for the abilities that are tied to their weapons.
Weird.
Yeah, a little bit. So if you wanted to make it so that Cloud was fully stacked with magic, you could do that. He's not necessarily designed to do that, but you could have him be the one who does that. And same thing, you could have Aerith be sending out all of the physical attacks, and so on and so forth. And I'm specifically using those 2 as the example because they were they're 2 of the first characters that you get, and Aerith is very much a magic user, while Cloud is very much a damage, just a physical damage user, and that's how they were designed. But it's also important to learn how different characters will be better when it comes to ranged attacks. So, for example, Barret is basically, you want to have him be available because he's one of your best ranged DPS characters. But you also want to have, early on, you want to have Aerith because she's one of your best healers, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of little pieces with that, and it's, like I said, it's interesting to see how it goes. But also, you want to make sure that you're pretty much preparing everyone but Aerith, because Aerith eventually dies. So there's that. Sorry for spoilers for for a game that's been out for years.
No, it's good. It's good.
But yeah. So yeah, so that was that. So yeah, pretty much wanted to make sure. Basically, what I've been saying is, you had to be ready to change things. You had to swap out characters and all that jazz.
Which makes sense because it's very similar to how the old Pokemon games worked before HP share
Yeah,
or XP share. Excuse me.
yeah, and I think they pretty much did that up until I want to say, 15, because 15 was a bit weird because of the fact that you pretty much had your entire party the entire time, and they were always fighting with you. So they were going to continue to level up no matter what you did, and the same thing kind of goes for 16 as well. But I think the biggest thing that they seem to do is they wanted to make sure that you were they downsized is basically what happened. Though it's also kind of funny though with depending on your party, each game has a different party size. So some will have 3, some will have 4. Is the most those are the 2 most common ones, but there are different ones. So for example, Final Fantasy VII had 3 you were able to walk around with 3 people in your party, and then the rest of your party would basically sit back and wait for you to do your stuff. Or for them to be put into your party. And there were 9 characters in that game. So it was basically an entire 2/3 of your party were basically sitting on the back line while you were doing all the big fighting. Granted, the last character that you got in 7 was very close to when you would lose Aerith. So obviously, so you had 8 characters pretty much in your party.
So it's turn based, but there's also a story going on.
Yes, very much so. Pretty much, so every single one of the Final Fantasies is kind of has its own story, and they have.
Do they have the same characters? Like Aerith, you say is one of the first ones you get. Is that one you get in every game?
No. So there is no character is in every single game. However,
that's why each game has a different story.
Yeah, they're completely separate universes. However,
like Cloud is only technically in 7, right?
Cloud is only in 7. He is in some of the spin-offs for 7. He's also in pretty much every character. Every main character is in Dissidia. In some of the other major spin-offs, which have like pretty much everyone combined. Same thing goes for Kingdom Hearts, where a ton of the characters are in there, but they're not. It's basically more for here's this character that you like, and not here's they're continuing their story and connecting into the same universe. It's not like 14's collaborations with 15 and 16, where the characters came from their universes and are interacting with your character. So yeah, like I said, all of these games are very they're connected in certain ways, but they're not super connected. So yeah, so like Zidane for is the main character for 9. He is not in any of the other games. But at the same, but another thing that's kind of interesting is that every single Final Fantasy has these archetypes. So there's like a fighter, there's a thief, there's a, there are 2 types of, well, there's actually several types of magic users, but there's like the white mage who is mostly for healing. That is basically Aerith, Dagger. I'm forgetting others, but you get my point. Then there is the thief, like Zidane. There is the black mage who uses DPS magic. That would be your Red 13s, your VVs. VV is basically is completely designed after the original black mage, and so on and so forth. and there are more. I can't think of all of them. I think the best example of all of the different types of characters that have been throughout the series is to just look at the characters or the classes in Final Fantasy XIV. And
Oh, there's so many.
there are so many, and luckily you can play all of them on one character.
Which is actually pretty cool.
It is very
And-
cool.
I haven't done that yet. I haven't gotten that part yet.
Yeah, you have to get to level 10 and 14 in order to actually be able to do that. And I think that part of the reason that they wanted to do that was because of the fact that, with compared to other games, you have to go through the entire story in order to play as any if you want to do an alt. So if you want to do the most recent stuff on several different characters, you have to go through the entire story in order to get to said point. And it can be a little bit infuriating for some people. So if you had to do that with every single class, it would just drive people up the wall. And they figured out ways to make it so that you can still play as your main across multiple different worlds, even if your friends are playing on different worlds. So there's that. Like I said, 14 is probably one of the best MMOs, and it continues to improve because they figured out ways that so that you can send your character over to other worlds, even if it's just for a visit. You have your main world, but then you can go and visit somebody else. So, for example, if I want to play as my main character and go over to the world that my dad's character is on, I can now do that. That was a relatively recent thing that they did because there's data centers and there's realms, and it's really complicated. I don't want to get into all of that right now, but yeah. 14 is like I said, 14 is a really good game. If you haven't played it yet, you probably should. So
Maybe.
huh? Yeah, it is free.
Maybe.
It's free, but unfortunately, you have to have like a good console or so. Whether that be a PlayStation, at this point, it's you really should you should either have a PlayStation 5, an Xbox Series, or a good PC. Because the Xbox Series I don't think is out yet, but yeah, so that that version isn't out yet. I think it's going to be coming soon, but I don't know the exact day. It is not. I do not believe it's going to be on the Switch. It might be on like the next Nintendo console if it's powerful enough, but at this point in time, I'm not holding my breath because the Switch could not handle Final Fantasy XIV. So, yeah. But also another interesting thing about 14 is that it's significantly been a better game than 11 ever was, which 11 was their first foray into MMOs, and it's
What does MMO stand for again?
massively multiplayer online game.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's very fun. Obviously there will always be toxic groups, just be aware of that if you do play the game. But as a whole, I would say that the Final Fantasy 14 fan group is pretty welcoming to a lot to newcomers, and yeah, have fun. I do obviously recommend that if you are going to get into Final Fantasy 14, you do play with a friend. Someone that you know outside of the game before you get into that, and they can introduce you to some of their specific friends and stuff like that, and that will
Like you.
like me. So I can so for example, I can with you guys, I can play. I can show you guys the ropes, and then I can introduce you to the to my FC in Final Fantasy 14, and then bada bing, bada boom. Lots of fun, to say the least. But yeah. As for the rest of the so yeah, you should now if you're into more action-based games, I would say probably start with 15 or 16. I would not start with Final Fantasy 7 because well, maybe it wouldn't be that bad to start with 7, with the 7 remake, but I wouldn't. I would say it's not the best option to start with because there are a lot of things in the 7 remakes that are that are kind of more nods at the original game as well as its spin-offs, and not everyone's gonna notice though is gonna understand those. But it is a good if you want to start learn about Final Fantasy VII. I would say that remake is a good option. But I don't know. It's kind like I said, it's an iffy situation to start with the Final Fantasy VII. As for turn-based, I've watched a video where they say that 10 is probably the best example of what to start off with, which I mean fair considering the fact that it's a new it's really good for newcomers because the fact that it is very linear, so you will always know exactly where you're going. But if you want to see the open world aspect of many of the Final Fantasies, I would say start with 9 or maybe 1 through 6. 7 and 8 are not really good options for newcomers, unfortunately. Just yeah, due to a lot of different things about that, but they're also not very good representations of what the rest of the Final Fantasy universe is like. So yeah, there's that. So yeah, Final Fantasy, it's fun. So
Evil laughter.
huh?
I said with your evil laughter.
Yeah, that is another thing, is that there is a lot of things with the Final Fantasy games that are very much mind fucks. Also, be aware that you will have to read for the Final Fantasy for pretty much every Final Fantasy game up until I want to say 10, maybe. But even 10, you still need to do quite a bit of reading. 13 is the one that has the least amount of reading. Up until 15 and 16, which you do not have to read at all for those. Every single thing is voice lined. The 7 remake is completely voiced. I believe 13 is mostly voice acted, but I think there might be like a few here and there that are not fully like a few characters like you can talk to and they're not voice acted, but it's pretty minor characters. With Final Fantasy X, I think that there's a lot more times that there's no voice acting, primarily because they specifically designed it so that you would never hear the name of the main character, because the main character was the only character that you could rename in 10.
Oh.
So yeah. To be fair, every game before that, you could rename the characters however the fuck you wanted to. Such as with Red 13, you always rename him Nanaki. I don't make the rules. But just trust me on this, you rename him Nanaki.
I see. Okay.
But yeah. Pretty much everyone else, it's just you can name them whatever. I usually like to go with their real names. Red 13 is you always want to name him Nanaki, like I said, because that's his real name. But everyone else, I usually go with the names that the game chooses for you. So for example, Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, so on and so forth. But obviously people have changed their names, such as yeah. We're not going to say all of those different names that people have given them. But yeah. I would also say another thing that's really fun is just like seeing all of the character interactions, because many of these characters have a lot of fun with them, with their whole shtick. And another thing to also be aware of is, even if you are playing as be aware that in certain games the dialogue and everything will change depending on who your party is. So the biggest example is with 7, where depending on who you have in your party, every single person reacts differently to eventually Aerith's death. In Final Fantasy, I think I'm not 100% certain if it started in 8 or if it started in 9, but they started to have all of the characters be there for the big important cinematic moments. So, for example, or pretty much anything. There's very few times where a character, if you don't have a character in your party, they're not going to be involved. I want to say it was 9 because I haven't gone too far in 8, but I know for a fact in 9 it didn't really matter who was in your party for any particular moment. They all helped you out with the different spots. And I'm not going to go into too many spoilers because I freaking love 9 and it's one of the most impactful games that I've ever played. And it's one of the reasons why I always say, play 9. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think that all of the 2D games, well, not all of the 2D games. So, all of the games on, from Final Fantasy 1 all the way through 9, I think they should be on the Switch. I'm not 100% certain, though. Let me go ahead and make sure of that, because I'm not, yeah. I'm pretty sure 9 or 10 onward is not. It's only on the PlayStation, except for a few things that are on the Xbox. Let's take a look here. Final Fantasy. So, yeah. So, I guess the 10 remake is on... Okay. So, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 9, Final Fantasy 8, 10 and 10-2, Final Fantasy 12, and obviously there's the collection that you found, and that has the entire series.
I just found 9 for Switch.
Yeah, so 9 is on Switch, 7 is on Switch, 8 is on Switch, 10 and 10-2 are on Switch, 12 is on Switch. I'm just looking at the eShop, and you can find all of them. Looks like obviously the Crisis Core Reunion is on Switch. It was on pretty much everything, so that's part of the reason why. And is that the original game? That might be. Yeah, it looks like the original Crisis Core is also on the Switch. Doesn't look like there's anything else that I would particularly say that you should check out. Obviously, the spin-offs can be quite fun, but it's not like the most important thing that you get every single spin-off.
Okay, so Final Fantasy 9 is on. Final Fantasy 7 and 8 remastered.
Yeah, 8 remastered is there. Like I said, pretty much 1 through 10-2 and then 12. They're all on the Switch. 11 is not gonna be on the Switch because it's really shit and nobody plays it anymore. So, yeah. And then 13, I don't think that... Well, the Switch might be powerful enough to handle 13. But it's hard to say because 13 is...
So then I should get just 9.
Huh?
I should just get 9 then.
I would say start with 9. That's one. That is the game that I suggest as... personally, that is the game that I suggest as the best starting off point for for someone wanting to play Final Fantasy. Other people will say 10, but at the same time, it's very linear, and very few of the games are linear. It's basically just 10, 13, and I think a little bit of 12. So, yeah. Beyond that, Final Fantasy 1 through 6 bundle, that might be also a good option if you just want to see a lot.
It's $98.
It's expensive.
Did you say 98?
Yep, I did.
So if you get the it's 75 on the eShop if you wanted to do that instead.
Great. So if I do that, I'll be getting that one. But 9 is in my cart for $40-something.
Yeah.
For 40?
So
Yeah, it's like
43.77 says.
or
Go for the digital version then. It's $20.99
on the Switch.
on the Switch. Yeah.
Oh, I might do that then.
I think I was able to get it cheaper on the PlayStation, but also like PlayStation was doing a deal at the time, so that's why.
Yeah, a thing with digital on the Switch is that you have to be connected to Wi-Fi.
That is
You can't take it places. So that's
Yeah. So if you want to be able to take it places, then maybe go for the other version. But if you want to just if you just want to play the game and you have Wi-Fi, go for the digital version because it's cheaper. But also, I don't think that these would require. I don't think that these are. Let me see here. These aren't.
I don't know.
Versions, though.
digital game I have on the
Some
Switch.
games, once you download them, they're yours. Like Stardew Valley, you can play offline.
Yeah.
Yeah,
this
but
would
there's
be
some
offline
games.
because it's once you get it, then you're good to play it. It's not Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Like compare
Or Fortnite, or
Yeah, Kingdom Hearts you would have to you have to unfortunately, if you want to play it on the Switch, you have to be connected to the internet. But yeah, because it's only the cloud versions and nobody likes it. Oh my gosh. But yeah.
That's weird because like I try to play some of my other games and it says I need Wi-Fi. That's weird.
Yeah, like I said, it's
Okay.
only certain games. But yeah.
So then maybe
I play Pokemon without Wi-Fi all the time, and they're both digital.
Weird. Okay, so maybe Final Fantasy 9 I will get and go from there.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that you want to look for is whether or not it's a cloud version. If it says cloud version, that would be it's only you have to have internet in order to play it.
Got it.
Like Kingdom Hearts, which really sucks.
Yeah, that's why I didn't do it for the Xbox. It's like I don't want the cloud version. I want the real version.
Yeah. Unfortunately,
I want a real boy.
I'm sorry, what?
I want to be a real boy.
Fair enough.
Story of my life.
Yeah. But you do have a PS3, so you could get 1.5 and 2.5. Joker.
I could.
You could, and then you could play the entire Kingdom Hearts game series up until the stuff that was only on the PS4.
Yeah, I've been thinking about getting that.
Yeah. But anyways,
Just hard to find it.
um,
And it's still like $20 just for.
I'm sorry, what was that?
It's $20 no matter where I try to find to get it.
Oh, for Kingdom Hearts?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be the case, which is actually pretty good considering the fact that, like, it's they were PS3 games and they were pretty like they weren't super early in the PS3 lifetime, but they were kind of early. The first one was earlier in the PS3's lifetime. The second one was pretty late in that, but yeah. But yeah. Anyways, so do you guys have any other questions about Final Fantasy specifically?
Not really.
Okay. Maybe we'll do this again at some point where after you guys have played a little bit, and then we'll be like, so now I have questions. What the heck is going on here?
You basically.
Maybe those will just be in private. We'll discuss them like that. Other than that, yeah, we should do more Q&A things where we're just like, okay, tell us about this thing that you really like. But next one it won't be something about that I really like. Maybe it will be something that Joker really likes, or maybe something that Jackie Boy likes.
Yes.
But we'll figure it out. You know, it's also kind of fun though, because now we can add, we might be able to add the Final Fantasies to the new 2 group for each of you guys.
Yeah.
Definite possibility. We shall see. We'll discuss it at a later date. But anyways, guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this nerd chat. I have been Electro Ninja. He's been Jack. He's been Joker. And we will see you guys next time. But on.
Bye bye.